You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. I'm Alan Weitz, and in today's episode, John and I continue our conversations from the Eddie Adams Workshop. On the third day of the workshop, we had an opportunity to sit down with Tim Rasmussen, Director of Digital and Print Photography at ESPN. Prior to ESPN, Tim was an Assistant Managing Editor of Photography and Multimedia at the Denver Post, where under his lead, the photo department earned 3 Pulitzer Prizes. Tim is also a member of the board of directors at the Eddie Adams Workshop, and in addition to having been a team leader, a producer, and an editor at the workshop, Tim was a student in the very first year, 1988. Our conversation with Tim revolves around the workshop, how he came to the first ever workshop, why it's become the breeding ground for a generation of talented photojournalists, and on Eddie Adams himself. We'll also talk with Tim about his own career and his transition from a photographer to an editor and how he ended up at ESPN. Within this relaxed conversation, there's much to learn about the threads of life and the nature of commitment, about the history of photojournalism, and particularly for young photographers, about what an editor looks for in a photographer. Join us as we talk with Tim. Thank you for sitting down with us. You're an old-timer here. You go back a ways.
I do, yeah.
How far back do you go?
The first year.
That's pretty far back.
Yeah.
What was it like? And why did you come here? Give us the whole connection.
I got here because a guy named Pete Schraub, he was my photo editor at a small paper. I was put myself through college working as a photographer. I walked in one day, and Pete had a application, and he handed it to me, and he said, "I'm sending this in for you." And he had put a portfolio together and wanted me to go to this thing called the Eddie Adams Workshop.
Was he your editor?
He was my editor, my photo editor. Yeah.
What was the paper?
The Logan Herald Journal in Logan, Utah. Great little newspaper. We had 3 staff photographers. We did a photo page every Saturday, and every Sunday we did a photo essay in a magazine.
That's when photojournalism was photojournalism.
Yeah, and you would work. I got paid $98 a week for the 5 years that I worked there and put myself through college on it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't care because I got to shoot pictures.
That's it.
And the best part was that I had free use of the darkroom and all the paper and film I could shoot and print.
At this point, how many years had you been addicted to photography?
I was 6. My sister Shauna was the high school newspaper photographer.
Yeah.
And was one of 7 kids and an adopted daughter. And she built a darkroom in what we called the boys' bathroom. It was the unfinished bathroom in the basement. So now we went down to 1 bathroom for the whole family. And when I was a little kid, my sister Shauna would develop film in this bathroom. And so as a little kid, I would sit on the countertop and agitate the film.
Wow.
And that's all I wanted to be.
By the time you got to the workshop, you were seasoned as a photographer. You already understood the process. You had worked it. It was part of your thought process.
Absolutely, yeah. I had to fight my way to become a photographer.
Were you studying at college? Were you studying photography or not?
Computer science.
Computer science. Oh, wow. Okay.
What a bad mistake that was. 1984, computer science major. Now I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
What the fuck
Let's go backwards.
Yeah, and so...
Does your sister, does she shoot? Is she a photographer?
No. But, she started this thing, and then she gave me books on it, and we couldn't afford a camera. And my grandmother gave me a little point and shoot, and I always tell the story. It's a dumb story, and it's actually not a really good story, probably. If I ever run for president, this is going to bite me in the butt. But I used to steal film from the local Safeways.
You're the one.
And shoot pictures, and then I would take it back and get it developed. But I couldn't figure out how to steal the prints back, so I never saw any of the pictures. Because, they put the prints below the countertop. Because I always thought maybe if I just saved it, I could have been the next Vivian Mayer, Right. I mean, who knows what I have out there, right?
That's great.
But I finally got to be a photographer. It was really hard for me. It was a hard path to do it, which is also probably why I'm so dedicated and driven to never give up on it. But
when you got to the workshop for the first time, what were your expectations? Did you already know that you needed?
Nobody had any expectations, including Eddie. I mean, you have to understand that year, I was actually telling the story, they sent out a poster calling for 99, not 100, 99 of the country's best young photographers could apply. You had to have a portfolio of no more than 20 photographs. You had to have a nomination letter from somebody, and you sent it in. They sent these posters, right? I'll never forget. It was a black poster with white lettering, and they sent it to every daily newspaper in the United States and to every university in the United States. Okay, and so they just showed up in places, but nobody knew who it was. Now everybody knew who Eddie was, right?
You knew who he was at the time.
Well, I was confusing him with Ansel Adams, which pissed him off. But yeah, so like we get these applications, and I was telling somebody the story. A friend of mine who came with me, so he was at a different newspaper in Utah, and we get accepted. It was crazy. Like I get this letter from a guy named I get two letters. One from Dimitra Kostas, and Dimitra was Eddie's accountant at Time Magazine. Not just Eddie, but all the great photographers back then. So she was the one that kept him on budget, and Demi was a producer, and it says you've been accepted. I mean, I was stunned, right? One of the 99 best young photographers in the country. And then I get a letter from Greg Heisler. Now, I'm in Utah, in this small northern little town at a university. At that point, I'm getting my degree in philosophy, right? I've really made this transition. And I didn't know what the hell to expect, but nobody did. And so I get on the airplane, and I put together like a portfolio to review when I get out here with this friend of mine. And we get out here, and after the first day, I remember going back to the day's end, because the first year the students stay at the day's end. And I said to him, "Oh my God, this is an amazing place." And he goes, I don't really get it. And it was really kind of fascinating. I think about that all the time. And he's still working at the same paper in Utah. He's still a very talented photographer. And I was so enamored by what this new world, this family that I found, right? This place I had been looking for maybe my whole life. Right, this bond, this connection. I call the barn the sanctuary, because the first time I heard John White speak in here back in the 90s was like going to church. Yeah. You know, and so for everybody, it's a little bit different. But that first year, nobody knew what to expect. I got to dance with Jody Cobb. I mean, I mean, come on, right? I told her that the other day that or about a year ago, I ran into her, and I hadn't seen her in years. And she's still as beautiful as ever. And I walked up to her and I said, "Jody, you don't understand, but you know, I was a kid and I got to dance with you at the barn at the party, and one of the greatest nights of my life." She blushed. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, make Jody Cobb blush."
So, I mean, even in that first year, Eddie was able to organize a lot of people to come up here, mentors and instructors and other photographers.
He had an unbelievable gift, and Eddie, as a photographer, Eddie had this thing where he could touch another person, whether it's a pauper or a king. It didn't matter. I mean, you know, it's almost a cliche, but it's true. I've seen him do it. You know, I've seen him break down barriers of people whose barriers are there for a reason. And his goal, honestly, and I used to ask him about this all the time, like, because I felt like I owed him and owed this place something. And to this day, I don't come to the workshop. Pete doesn't put in my portfolio, right? I don't come to the workshop. I'm nowhere in this career. I'm not one of those people. I'm a small newspaper photographer in Utah, right? And I don't get to meet the people I met, and I don't actually get to experience. So that's when he changed it to an experience in photojournalism, was after that first year, which is what it really was.
Wow. Well, we're done here, right? Wow. So do you come every year?
In 1988, I was so enamored, I called back to Demi, the producer, and begged her to let me come. I'd sleep on the floor or whatever. And she said, "We don't take advantage of students like that. I'm sorry." But I said, "No, I'll do anything."
So that ethics was already in place.
It wasn't ethics at all. I mean, that was Demi.
Oh, that's her. Okay.
No, there was a lot. She's a good person.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was like, no, you don't understand. You're not taking advantage of me. I mean, I have to be part of it. And they had a group of people that volunteered at the beginning, Duke Devlin and Lisa and Virginia Sherwood and, you know, Skip Steffner and Eileen and Sandy Colton and Chip Morey and all these people who put it on, right, at the very, very beginning. They all came up here of their own time, and, you know, they were all friends of Eddie, FOEs, and, John Philo, you know, the original carpenter up here.
Oh, yeah.
And they all bought into the dream, you know, Eliane Lafont. They all bought into the dream. How people, all these guys believed this crazy idea. And Eddie had this thing, and he, if you ever spend any time with him, right, he'd have these crazy ideas, and he would look at you and he would say, "Can you see it? Can you see it, Tim? Can you see it?" And a couple of times I would look at him and say, "You're out of your mind, Eddie. I can't see it." And he's like, "No, can you see it? Can you see it?" And that was the workshop, right? He buys this farm. He says to these friends of his who were some of the best in the business, I want to build this place. And I never finished the thing, which is kind of one of my problems. I'm like the squirrel. I'm always taking off to different places. But his goal was, right, to take all these friends of his, all these people that he could attract, all of these people that he had met over a lifetime. Great photographers, Alfred Eisenstadt, Carl Meidens, and Gordon Parks, and Joe Rosenthal, Louis Luada, like these great names in photography, contrasting names, and put him in the same room with kids, right? And then let that just be what it was. Let it just happen, He would intentionally put people on the stand that he absolutely did not agree with.
It was controlled chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's kind of fascinating is we really haven't changed the format much.
Well, I was saying to Jason last night, I mean, you had Gene Richards followed by Corey Rich. I mean, and they're both showing their videos, and there couldn't have been two more distinct styles, right back to back.
And the thing is that he wasn't saying you had to be something. He wasn't saying you had to be this or you had to be that. He just wanted you to be something. I mean, he wanted the students to leave here and leave a legacy. For a man who had an unbelievable legacy, this is the legacy he cared about. Two things: the Boat of No Smiles and the workshop.
And what is the Boat of No Smiles?
So the story that he's best known for, obviously, is the execution picture in Vietnam.
Right.
But the best story was that Eddie and Vietnamese refugees were trying to make it to Thailand. And there was a boat stuck out there. And so Eddie rented a boat, went out to the boat, and they left him on the boat. And so he became part of, on that boat with everybody else. And when the government found out that Eddie Adams was on this boat, right, an AP photographer on this boat with these people, they tried to get him off. They tried to make him leave, and he wouldn't leave. And he photographed these refugees trying to make it to Thailand who were being denied. They kept pushing the boats away. They didn't want any more Vietnamese refugees. And subsequently, right, the conversation in the country changed, and Vietnamese refugees were brought to America, and a lot of them. So he wasn't, I don't think anybody can point a finger and say, that's all Eddie, but a lot of it was Eddie. And that was the thing he wanted to be remembered for, was what he did after that picture.
And, getting back a bit to the beginnings of the workshop, was there anything else going on in the photo community, in the photojournalism world like this at that time? Were there workshops? Were there a place where people could get together? Sanctuary?
Not like this. I mean, there certainly were workshops, and certainly were places that, MPPA had a lot of different programs, Flying Short Course and things like that. But the real difference was this was always called tuition free.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it would cost if you had to pay some of these incredible people to talk here? Can you imagine what it would cost if, we volunteer our time, our companies support us in this? It's really amazing. So his goal was that the workshop would be free to the students, that it wouldn't cost them anything to go to this, because there was a lot of workshops that he taught at where he was paid an honorarium, but the students had to pay thousands of dollars to see it.
Yeah.
It's business.
It's business.
And how do you, when you're dealing with the students now, how do you kind of keep what you would consider this kind of vision alive, and how do you pass that to them?
Well, and I think it's interesting because I have the thread from the beginning to the end of this, and it's changed. We've adapted. I mean, the first digital team here was in I want to say it was 94 or 5. We really tried early on, and we started bringing digital cameras up here early on, back when Kodak was still a sponsor, and they really tried to adapt to certain things. We, multimedia, whatever kind of things of changing and adapting. But the truth is, the workshop's still about a couple things, and one of them is always about the students. It's always about what they leave with. I always tell the students when they come here, it's not what you do this weekend, it's what you do 5 years from now. And the reason really is because the workshop sparks conversations in your own head, your own mind, about what it is you want to be. Some of the photographers go off to be the photographer they always dreamed of, and other photographers find different paths, right? It's an interesting place. I mean, one of the things that David Allen Harvey said to me the first year was that this is a family. And I hadn't really ever thought about it, and now it is. We call it the family, and it's really true. We're a small industry. If you've ever been to a convention of writers or editors, they're not like us. I mean, think about it. I mean, we go to these things and we talk about it with passion and we cry on the stand and we talk about people we met and the photographs that we made and the things that happened to those people. You know, we don't talk about us. We talk about the people that we got to meet along the way. And so I think it's kind of fascinating that, you know, how we approach that. And that was how Eddie was. And it certainly is. His dream was that this would go on and that people would pick up the mantle and that we would not give up on it. I have to say that the fortitude that Alyssa Adams has to continue this is phenomenal, because I ran it a few years and I know how difficult it is just to keep it going. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important for the community. Now you're talking 2,900 students have gone through the workshop. Yeah. And if you look at that list of students and look at what they've accomplished since, it's really quite amazing.
Absolutely.
Would it be safe to say that it's become easier in a sense to raise funds for it, or is that really not a truth?
Just the opposite.
Really?
Yeah.
So the more credible it's become and the more lasting it's been?
The industry's changed.
That's also real true. Yeah.
Think about Kodak. When when Eddie started the workshop, the major sponsor was Kodak.
Right.
And Kodak was a phenomenal company. You know, one of the richest companies in the world.
It was a gold standard.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a shame, honestly, because of the inventions and the things that they were so good at. They just missed this right.
Yes.
And they didn't. They invented the first digital camera.
Yeah.
You know, and so
I remember the 760 and the original digital backs with that took compact flat, all the things they were cutting edge for a few years.
Yeah, the first thing that they brought up here, it was a backpack. It was a computer on a sling you had to carry around with you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but it's interesting now that Nikon, when you think about it, Nikon has been here from the beginning, and they haven't given up on it, and they're still here, and they don't care what camera you carry up here. They care that you leave and you get, you know, this opportunity still happens for them.
Gotcha. How many other people have been here more than, say, maybe 2 or 3 years? People who have really woven this into the fabric of their life, like yourself?
Quite a few people. I mean, it's not true. I've not been here a lot. I made Eddie Adams' shit list. And I had only missed 89, and then I had asked to take some time off because I had put in so much, and my good friend never invited me back for a long time. Ooh. Yeah, it's okay. It's on my resume.
Wow. Is it like that invite only type of thing? I mean,
what it is this. It truly is that they want to make certain, right, that you can bring in a lot of different voices. So the voices will be here for a while, and then we'll change the voices, right? Mm-hmm. And those voices are important to change because there's new voices that come in, right? And those new voices change the fabric of what we do. And so Alyssa's really good about saying it has nothing to do with whether or not you're great or you're great up here. It doesn't matter at all. What it matters is that the voices change. And also it changes the dynamic at the workshop. When you bring on people who have never been here before and they get to be me in 1988 and they go, what the hell? I've never seen anything like this. Then all of a sudden you're bringing in new energy and you're bringing new thoughts and you're changing that dynamic. And Eddie was very, very good at that. So people that I worked with when I was first here, when I came back, were no longer here. Mm-hmm. It was really fascinating. Jimmy Colton is one of the very, very, very long threads. His father, Sandy Colton, and Irene Colton were, you know, people who have been here forever. There's very few who have made them all. I think Alyssa. Oh yeah, she's made them all.
And how did things change after Eddie died? How did the workshop, the dynamics, the people that came?
Honestly, the biggest change is that there isn't an ego big enough to control all these freaking eagles.
Oh, really? And you can't take that role? I think you're doing pretty well for what I've seen.
I can channel him. Okay. I can channel him, and I have at times. I mean,
have you intentionally amped it up a little bit on that end because of the fact that he doesn't? No, so it's all you.
No. It's
pure Rasmussen.
No. No, some of it is definitely him. I've actually there's a couple times in my life where I knew I had to become Eddie. That was the word I used in my head. Like, you have to be Eddie right now, Tim. And mostly because of the way that Eddie refused to take no for an answer from anybody.
That's pretty.
He
Powerful
did
legacy.
no was not a word that the man accepted. And I think that, for me, the biggest thing that I have is I actually have with Alyssa, we have this continuity, right? I honor as best I can what he intended. And so I always stay pure to what he intended. Everything I do here is about it. It's not about anybody else but the students. The rest of it is just is in the service of that idea. And students can be a pain in the butt. Don't get me wrong, right? I think that the most important thing is that if the goal, the students have changed, right? When we came up in 1988 and all the way through to the 2000s, you were given 15 rolls of Ektachrome, and then you were given some 400 and some 1600. So it totaled out at 20 rolls of film, 720 frames. That's it. Okay.
No, it's that today.
I own the record apparently, and it's not me, but we own the record of how many frames were ever shot at the workshop. And it's something like 60,000 in 2 days, which is insane because I have to edit all those. When you only have 720 frames, and literally only about 450 of them are usable because the 1600 wasn't very good and the 400 was a little bit risky. And you come up here and you're given slide film. If you had not shot slide film and you came to the Eddie Adams workshop, it was tough.
Yeah, exposure latitude is, yeah.
And so it was a different time, and I've actually pitched it many, many, many times to limit them to 720 frames.
Cool.
Yeah, and I've tried to get him to get Lexar to give us just like 512 meg cards. Remember those?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I have a bunch of those.
So same here, yeah.
That's about 720 frames.
They make good guitar picks.
Yeah, exactly. But there was something that was part of that too. Is you had to think, and so the difference for me is that we were forced to learn the craft of photography.
Ooh, yes.
Lenses, optics, depth of field, exposure, shutter, ISO.
Yeah, I see.
It's called photography.
It's called photography. And some of these kids that come up here, they pick up a camera, they put it on aperture priority, they put it on autofocus, and they make pictures, but they don't know why, and they don't even know how. And it's fascinating. And I think the universities where they go to the photo schools are doing a huge disservice, by not forcing them to learn what the value of optics are. Sandy Colton was the executive photo editor of the AP for years and was Eddie's boss there. And Jimmy Colton and Jay Colton's father, great guy. And he used to tell me the story about when he ran the office in Tokyo. And when he'd get a new photographer in, he would give him a speed graphic and 12 frames, so 6 carriers. And he would put him in this 20 by 20 foot chain link fenced area in the back of the lab and tell him they had to make 20 photographs that were completely different. And until they did that, they can't shoot for him. It's great, right? So now what I do is when I got interns, I just riffed on Sandy.
Yeah.
And I would give them all the lenses in a kit, and they had to make 10 photographs that showed me the range of that lens optically before they could move to the next lens, and they couldn't shoot as an intern for us until they got through all the lenses. One kid took 6 weeks. It's only like an 8-week internship, but they learned more out of it. And I think that that gift, right, being forced to learn that thing, and for me was, my FM and a 50 millimeter lens, because that's all I could afford. That gift is I mastered that lens. And then when I got my second lens, right, the 35, 1.2, and then when I got my third lens, the 24, you had to learn it.
I actually wanted to ask you, you're speaking of Sandy Colton. Can you speak about some personalities that have passed away and that are really missed here, like their dynamism or their...
I mean, it's really fascinating when I walk around the farm, I remember the moments. Sandy for sure. He was a big influence, and for a lot of the young photographers coming up, Sandy's era, he had retired. Sitting and talking with Sandy and the things that he had done, the things that he had invented at the Associated Press to better photography is just stunning. I remember the day Joe Rosenthal came. It was the first time that Joe came up here, and I was a workshop team producer. And, of course, everybody knew the name Joe Rosenthal. Everybody knew the picture Joe Rosenthal. But I got to be the man. And so he was sitting down by the house by himself. And Joe had these big Coke bottle glasses, and he had a little cane. And I was walking down the hill, with the photographer, the workshop photographer back then, and a kid named Michael Lutsky. And Michael Lutsky at the time was heralded as this great young next generation, and he was. And I said, Michael, let's go talk to Joe Rosenthal. And so we went down, we sat next to him, and he's just sitting there. And I was like, I want to introduce myself. I just want to meet him. And Joe and I became very good friends over the many years that he came here. And he sat there, and I just said, Joe, I want to know, what was it like? What was it like to walk up that hill that day? What was it like? And so Joe sat there for the next 2 or 3 hours, and he told us the stories of Savatgy. He told us like everything about that morning, that day, that black sand beach, and the bodies that were buried in it. And then he tells us the whole story of the flag. He tells us the whole thing. 2 kids, sitting there, and I found the Kodachromes. Recently, I found the Kodachromes because Michael was supposed to be shooting, but he was so enamored with them he wasn't shooting. So I just grabbed his camera and shot a few frames. And Joe, at one point, he tells a story about finding a baby, and I mean, it was just crazy. Like things that I probably hadn't brought up. Takes his Coke bottle glasses off, and he's wiping a tear away. I mean, it was an amazing man. That was really the opportunity for us back in the early days, like Gordy Parks, Carl Meidens. Oh my God, Eisenstadt, Louis Lovato, still my favorite. Yeah, and mostly because he came in this room and he told stories that would be the antithesis of everything I believe in, and I loved every minute of it. Yeah,
well, great. Can we then kind of jump now to talk about your own career a bit? I know you went from Utah. I know what I know is the Denver Post and now ESPN. Maybe you could fill in if you want some of the other spots. But then I'd like to ask you about what we were talking about in terms of when you look at the work of the students and prospective photographers.
Career is a funny thing. I actually said that taking the job at ESPN was the first career move I ever made. Every decision that I ever made up until that moment was how I was going to get funded to take more pictures. When I became an editor, it was because I couldn't get hired as a photographer at newspapers. in part, my own problem. I was a little bit nutty. I demanded to do it my way. I wanted to be a great photojournalist. That was all I wanted. And newspapers at that time weren't ready for that. In some places, there were some people I wish I had met, like Colin Crawford at LA. If I'd met Colin Crawford back then, my career would have been completely different. Not every director of photography. I remember one of them says to me, if I had a project photographer job open right now, I'd hire you in a minute. But we shoot mundane bullshit here. And this was the last interview I had, and I said, why? And he goes, well, we're a newspaper. I said, why do you have to shoot mundane pictures? Why can't you make them better? I don't get it. And he goes, well, that's just the nature of it. And I said, I don't know. You could make them better. You're the director of photography.
I'll do it for you.
And he goes, no, you wouldn't be interested. I'd absolutely be interested. So then I took a job at a small newspaper to become a photo editor. And one of the things I did was I took a yellow pad, which I have to this day, put a line down the middle. On the left side, I wrote everything that I would do as a photo editor. And on the right side, I wrote everything I wouldn't do as a photo editor. Right? At that point, I had worked at like 6 or 7 different places, either as interns or staff photographer or as a freelancer.
Was that list coming from the photographer's point of view or what you had hoped to do as an editor? Or?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Okay. And so when you think about it, I sat down and said, what does a photographer need? In my office, I have a picture that I took of Eddie. And the chair the photographer sat in, right behind them is a picture of Eddie. And the reason it's there is to always remind me when I'm talking to a photographer that I'm talking to a photographer. And he's always watching, not in a nice way. He's keeping me honest. But, you think about it, and like that was the goal for me, and then my career changed and I became an editor. And then my goal wasn't to make the greatest pictures, was to help other people make great pictures and do everything I could for them from the perspective of that kid who came to the workshop who wanted to be great. Right? I never got to do that. Right? Fair enough. But the whole goal was, from that moment on, I didn't change it. I just changed the road I went. So career is a really fickle thing. Honestly, there's lots of people I know who have careers and their life sucks. My life's been freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. I've done everything I've ever wanted. I've got a beautiful wife, 2 great kids, and I still get to edit pictures for a living.
So would you, this is maybe a bit of a stretch of a question, but would you consider your personality then more of a facilitator, a helper, a mentor, and being an editor, you find that niche then? Or if you could drop it all, and,
I don't
and
think
be that
anybody
great
would ever
photographer.
call me any of those things.
Or an ass kicker then, or
No,
something.
it's just, honestly, it's a
do you find as much joy in seeing that great photo of one of your staff as it had it been your own photo?
There was a joy that came that I don't think photographers of this generation will ever have, and that was the joy of working hard, making a photograph, and not knowing if you made it or not seeing it. There was this absolute fear, drive to make you have it, and then you walk back into the dark room and you souped it, and you still didn't know if you had it, and then you tried to print it. And then if you could print it and it came up slowly in the developer, right? It just came up in the Dectal, and then you could see it, and then you could hoot and you could holler. I still do that. I still hoot and holler.
I hear you 100%. It's really funny. That's one of the things I like about that Leica they just came out with about the LCD on the back. It's the digital version of that. You won't know till you get home. Go take pictures.
A lot of photographers that work for me, I take duct tape or gaffer's tape.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I write my initials on it. No, I do. So that if they try to take it off, I know that it's been removed. Kind of like a security seal.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you were talking about not looking at portfolios when prospective staffers come to you?
Well, not for staffers, but for folks here, yeah.
For folks here, okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
even for staffers. I'll look at their work, but that's really not the work you're looking for, right? I mean, for students here, I don't really want it's not that I don't care. It's that I want a blank slate. I want the conversation that we have to be about this moment and where they go, not where they've been.
And that's what it's like when you get an assignment as a working photographer. Yes, you did 12 successful pictures and you showed a great portfolio, and they say, okay, I'm sending you out here to do this. You're starting from ground zero. Now you have to take whatever it is, good or bad, and make it work.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've been saying to the great staff at ESPN, the photo staff, is like we have a lot of portfolios, and it's a very different environment. Like we look at portfolios constantly, right? We're looking online, and I'm always like, and I'm like, well, this is not what they do. Why do they want to do this? Why do you want to hire them for this? That's not what they do. And I always say the same thing, which is I want to hire the photographer who shoots for us and puts our work on their portfolio. That what they do for us is so valued to them that it's worth putting on that book, right? And that's the thing. Like, I look at a lot of the people, and they're like, well, they did a couple assignments for us, and it wasn't good enough to even make their book. So something about that isn't working for me.
Great point of view. Very good. I like that.
Yeah, and so it is kind of interesting too, because like if you look back at portfolios, like you said, it's where you've been. I just want to see where they're going here. I mean, I really want to see where these kids go. And it's a year from now, 5 years from now. And it's really fascinating for me because now I think I've had, I don't know, maybe 18 teams over my entire career. And I've worked at every level. So I was the producer. So I did the producing team. And then I was a photographer 1 year. That was pretty hilarious. And then I've been an editor, but it's really interesting because I think back to those students and I watched their whole careers go. And I had one sliver in time. I'm not taking credit for their careers, but it is kind of fascinating because you build that family and you build that response. And people will come up later and said, you said something to me, then I did this, and I don't know that it's about what the place is about, right? The same way that I walked up to Eddie when I came back and said, you changed my life forever.
Question for you, if I may.
Yeah.
You're pretty clear. I love the fact that you're not really interested in what they're walking in with, it's what they're walking out with. Do you ever, once everything is finished up and the projects are gone and everybody's slapped everybody in the back and the fire has been burning, do you then go back and look to see the work that they came in with to see if there was really a breakthrough?
I do.
Okay, good.
I don't always tell them I do. We all have all the links. And sometimes, some folks that I've worked with want to look at all the portfolios. And I'm like, that's great. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. But a couple times in the year when people really, really, really want that feedback, we'll do it afterwards over Skype.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll look over Skype.
Are you usually pleasantly surprised and happy with what you see, or what's the ratio between that and saying, I don't know if there's a real breakthrough here? Or is it, I don't know if you could even...
I'm not really sure. I mean, not sometimes, but a lot of times the things that I saw in their portfolio were things that were issues when they were shooting here.
Okay. what percentage of the assignments, the projects that happen every single year, do you ever have some that just don't quite gel?
Every year.
And it could be for any number of reasons, not that they're untalented, but anything.
Every year. I mean, it's every year we know that on Friday, at least I would say 20% of our assignments will drop. Like people just won't call us back, and this happened again this year. Yeah. So every year, and it's funny because we have backups, and usually they're people that we've been to for years, or we have relationships with, and like the kid's story dropped, and so he got the pickup assignment, which we'd been 2 years, and he got the birth of a calf.
Well, that was just happened yesterday.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, oh, it works for it.
All right. And as opposed to looking at the work, is it fair to say that the interactions and I'm going to use the word you used, the spark, is something that you'll value equally when you're dealing with the kids here, and you can kind of foresee where they're going to go?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How they react to the criticism and all those
Absolutely.
factors.
Yeah. And some people will take it and some people won't. And sometimes I'm my worst enemy. In some regards, I mean, I'm tired. Last night I was sitting at the portfolio reviews, which I always do, even though they said we don't have to, because that conversation is really important to the students, whether they get something out of it or not. I think sometimes you say things that hits them later. This is a delayed reaction, the workshop. Mm-hmm. It's a very delayed reaction for some people, and other people get it immediately. But this kid walked up to me last night, and I was done. I'd already done my 4 people, and I was done. I was done. Mm-hmm. And I was heading to the door, and he caught me, and he's the second one that had caught me. And so I was like, and I said, "Look, man, I'm done." And he said, "No, I really want to show you my pictures." And I said, "No, I'm really, man, honestly, you don't want. I mean, I got nothing left for you." Yeah. And he said, "No, but you're the only person I wanted to see." I said, "Okay, fine, right, fine." Yeah, sit down, and pulls up these things. Nice young man. And he pulls up the story. It's actually a story we're looking for, in the place we're looking for it, and he's already shot it. And it's part of this year-long project we're working on. Uh-huh. And it's not easy to do.
When you say we, you mean
at ESPN.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. That's wild.
And right in front of me is this completed body of work that I would have needed to start 6 months ago to actually have gone to where he is, but we haven't been able to find the subject. And he walks up and hands it to me. Oh, my God.
And from there?
I bought the story.
That's great.
Wow. I totally bought the story.
That's a great story.
I bought the story.
And have you then gone on to hire people you've found here, met here?
A number of them, yeah. Aaron Ontiveros at the Denver Post is an exceptional photographer. I met him here. Mm-hmm. He walked up, sat down at my table, and I usually ask 3 questions, like where are you at? How'd you get in pictures, and what do you want to be? And it's a little bit of a goofy question, right? Yeah. And what do you want to be? And I want to be a photographer. So, no, that's what you want to do. Oh, what do you want to be? And it's a really hard question. And it's like, I want to be a nice person. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll accept that. But that's really not what I'm after here. And try to get them to think about what it is through their camera that they can define their life, right? Or define a part of their life. So anyway, Aaron sat down, and I looked at these pictures, and I'm looking at these pictures, and I said, "Now, where are you at?" He goes, "I'm in Cheyenne." It was right down the street from Denver. And I was like, "What are you doing in Cheyenne? I mean, you're really good." What he didn't know is I actually had an opening that had just come open like the week before. And I went back to Denver, and I called him and said, "Do you want to work at the Post?" And I hired him sight unseen. Wow. And so he and Aaron has been brilliant, has done unbelievable stuff there. And it was just that conversation, and it was, some people work above the place they're at always in life, right? My goal is wherever I am, I always look to the person who's better than me above me. And that's where I seek to be. Not necessarily at their place, but at that level, right? And so and that's what Aaron had done. And it's really hard for photographers to do that at a small paper or at a paper that doesn't appreciate them, or one that thinks the pictures are mundane and they're never going to do it. But when you find the photographer who does that on their own, Craig Walker, when you find the photographer that does that on their own, and I don't let those guys go.
Right. I have just one more question, maybe. Sure. And you went from the Denver Post to ESPN. I don't know, if you specialized in sports photography prior, and And does it matter? And
ESPN's an amazing place.
Okay.
I will say that I felt a little bit of a newspaper refugee there after a career in newspapers and magazines, and going to ESPN. It's an amazing place. It's not the place that people think it is. We are the worldwide leader in sports. We define ourselves around what fans want. I have never been part of more storytelling conversations in my life.
Interesting point. Yeah,
it is really fascinating. And so like when I actually applied, mostly out of frustration at the place I was working in, the parent company, which was destroying it for profit only. And ESPN, I applied, and then they came back and said, fill out this questionnaire. So I worked really hard on that questionnaire. And it was really fascinating because the guy who was there named John Corpix, a brilliant genius, was asking kind of questions like I ask questions, right? What do you want to be? Who do you think does photography great on mobile devices? My response was, no one. Because they don't. Photography on mobile devices are really, really difficult, right? From a journalism news perspective, it's really, really hard.
And taking with mobile device.
No.
Looking at it.
And looking at it, how to present it, right, okay. Presentation. So anyway, so then John calls me and we have an interview and we go through this process, and I ask my family and they say, no, we're not leaving Colorado. And so I turn him down, and he thought that was pretty funny. After he hired me, he got a real kick out of that.
I bet.
Yeah. And then my 12-year-old son said, at one point he sat down on my knee and he said, Dad, about that thing at Espen, because that's what he called it, Espen. I'll go if you think it's best for our family, I'll go.
Yeah.
And so right at that moment, I got an email from John Corpix that said, I'm going to hire this job tomorrow unless you'll come for an interview. And so I couldn't believe it. It was like really fadeish. And I wrote back, if you'll take no for an answer, I'll come for an interview. But after meeting him and meeting the people there, and Chad Millman and Patrick Stegman and, Rob King and these unbelievable people who talked about story in a way and what they did there. It's really amazing. People who knew me go like, why would you go to ESPN? You're really not a sports nut kind of guy. And I am. I was totally a sports nut as a kid. But it was really, we talk about story and we talk about narrative and we tell stories. And it's really kind of fascinating. And they want it. And I said, well, why do you want me, John? I don't get it. It's not what I do. And he said that he wanted me to tell the stories like we were telling in Denver as much as I could here. And so they've given us the freedom to actually use it as a platform to tell great stories, even some social documentary stories, through the lens of sports. It was really fabulous. So I didn't have to explain what I was trying to do. They knew exactly what I was talking about. For the first time in my life, I was at some place that said, yeah, these are not only good, these are important, and we want more of them.
And it's so strange how in the bigger news sense that is idea shrinking, but in the sports world, it's growing. No, is it fair to say that this story idea?
Our leader John Skipper has an absolute belief that sports and life sports coverage is not going away. It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, like, sports becomes this. It's not tangential to life. It actually threads through life, either as a fan or as an athlete or as a young athlete or a parent. If you think about it, sports is really just one removed from almost everybody. And so that's why it's so easy to tell stories about sports and life and culture.
It also has the celebrity aspect to it, which is seriously, you look at what society's about right now with social media. Sports is excitement. Everyone's into sports. A lot of people are. Most people are. And then you have the celebrity aspect to it, which ties into it. Yeah, it blasts off.
Yeah. And then you have...
Makes trade talks kind of boring.
Exactly. When you think about it, the old sports conversation has changed even this year again. With Butler and with Kaepernick, and a conversation,
absolutely.
Which is a good conversation.
Yeah.
A typically brilliant, un-American conversation to stand up for what you believe, whether I believe it or not. It's a great conversation to have.
Great point.
And so why not have it why can't we have it in an arena? Why can't we have it at an AM's workshop? Why can't we have it anywhere? And I think that is really a classic American thing. So whether you agree with him or not.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Great talking with you.
Appreciate it, Tim.
Yeah, this was great.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
That was wonderful. Great stories. Thank you to Tim Rasmussen, as well as to Alyssa Adams and Miriam Evers of the Eddie Adams Workshop, which is sponsored by Nikon with support from B&H. And as always, thanks to John Harris and Jason Tables, and to our listeners whose feedback and comments help guide our show. We can be reached on Twitter and Instagram with the hashtag bhphotopodcast, or feel free to email us at podcast@bhphoto.com. My name is Alan Weitz, and as always, thank you so much for joining us today.